It was getting late, and the sun was going down fast. A group of tired travelers was moving through a big, messy forest. They were a caravan group called Byron's Trade Route, but oh bro, things were not going well. One of the men realized he was totally lost, and he felt super annoyed that he was still walking after such a long day. Who could blame him? Nobody likes walking in the woods when it's almost night. Tension started getting big in the group. One man, who looked like a boss there, didn't waste time. He asked Byron, the leader, if this wasn't really his first time doing this route. This dude was over it, saying he should have never signed up for this crappy job and only hired 10 guards. If only he had known the road would be such a pain, he said he wouldn't have come. What a mess! Byron wasn't happy with those words. He tried to defend himself. He explained that it wasn't their first journey at all, and that sometimes the land and mountains could change. Well, that sounded a bit weak, but what else could he say? Meanwhile, Tilrock, a big knight there, was watching everything. He said if the merchants really did know the way, then maybe something outside their control had changed the whole place. But before Tilrock could even finish talking, the boss got all mad and called out to Baxter. Then, bam! All of a sudden, without a warning, Baxter pulled out his sword and rushed forward as fast as lightning. Why? Because out of nowhere, a gnoll monster attacked the group. Total chaos. The group freaked out even more when they saw that this monster was wearing special armor made by the Uruks. Uh-oh. That's when they knew they were totally in a trap. Baxter was quick and acted like a real boss. He yelled at everyone to stay close together and not run off, saying that anyone who got separated would get eaten in seconds. Yikes! The guards looked around, and crap, they were surrounded. So many glowing eyes were shining in the dark all around them. Tilrock got nervous and asked how many monsters there were. But his buddy said that it wasn't good to count them. Yeah, too many, dude. Suddenly, the monsters attacked, and wow, it was an ugly battle. There was screaming, fighting, and even more screaming. People wanted the monsters to die, but the monsters sure weren't making it easy. Byron was shocked by how violent everything got, even for a monster fight. This was wild! But just then, Tilrock shut him up right away and said he would make Byron and the other merchants pay for this, but only if they stayed alive. Oof, that wasn't a good promise. After the group finally beat the first wave of monsters, yep, just the first wave, Baxter warned everyone to not relax. He said monster traps always come in groups, so if you chill out too soon, you're toast. Almost as soon as he said this, Byron started yelling and told everyone to look. Far away, they saw a giant troll coming. Like really huge. Everybody stopped and just stared. After fighting monsters, now they had to fight a troll? Their luck was so bad. Panic spread super fast, and one of the men screamed that they needed to run, or the troll would destroy them all in one hit. Somehow, the troll is smart enough to use his surroundings and throw a big stone. Byron just gave up at this point and thought he was totally dead, that everyone was going to die right there. Meanwhile, after throwing the stone, the troll started looking for another big stone. Crazy. Baxter started thinking, how could this troll be this smart? Was this troll trained to do this? Or was it some crazy war machine that went wild? And how was someone making monster weapons like this out here in the woods? It was nuts. But Baxter saw there was no way to escape. It was a wild trap. So, he told his men what to do. 2 of them had to protect the merchants, and Tilrock needed to distract the troll and make it look the other way next time it attacked. Tilrock hated this plan. He said Baxter was insane, and that they should just throw the merchants to the troll and run away. But hey, he still wanted to know if Baxter really had a plan. Baxter told him that yes, he did have a plan, and Tilrock knew it already. The plan was simple. When the troll got distracted, they would rush between its legs and get away. They had done this many times before, but still, Tilrock looked horrified. He said he would rather die than do that plan again. Anyway, he started running to do it, but then stopped. Wait a second, the troll wasn't even looking at them. It was staring in a totally different direction. Just then, something totally wild happened. The troll suddenly fell over really hard. So hard that poor thing flew through the air. Both Baxter and Tilrock stood up in shock and asked what the hell happened, who brought down such a big monster in one single punch. The answer? It's not Saitama, guys. Nope. From the darkness, a new monster appeared. This one was even bigger, scarier, and had glowing blue eyes. It walked straight over to the dead troll, picked up its body, and then, without even blinking, it crushed the troll's head with its bare hands. That was insane! One of the merchants started freaking out and asked Baxter what this new monster was. Baxter said that guys from the city probably never heard of it, but in these woods, this was the scariest creature of all. He said legends told that anyone who met this thing never came back alive. Then, he revealed its name. It was called an ogre. The merchant was just stunned. Baxter said ogres were very rare and super strong, fast and smart compared to other monsters, and they never give up when hunting. Even Baxter was amazed, because he had only heard about ogres in stories, never seen one for real. The merchants were asking why the mercenaries weren't moving at all. Baxter started to think about escaping but realized that running would just make him easy food, so he just dropped to the ground and gave up. But somehow the ogre didn't attack though. Nope. It walked over to Baxter, stretched out its blood-covered hand, and started talking in a calm way. The ogre said that Baxter had seen some tough things, called him a poor thing, and it was going to help him from now on. It told him not to be afraid and explained that its blood was the same as human blood. Then, the ogre said its name. It was Leon, and he was half human and half ogre. Wow, this was so unique. A half-blood MC? Yes, I will take it, please. So, after all that craziness with monsters, Baxter, Byron, and the whole gang were led by Leon through the woods. Can you believe it? The one who helped them most was a big, scary ogre, but this guy was actually super helpful. Anyway, Leon took them all the way to Byron Village, which was deep in the kingdom of Arnia, and pretty much off the map. As they got closer to these giant wooden walls around the village, a guard saw them coming. He yelled down, wanting to know who the heck was out there. The travelers started to relax a little. Some of them almost couldn't believe they made it out alive. Byron was complaining about how much everything hurt, saying he thought he was gonna die for sure. Tilrock, the knight, was in a foul mood too, grumbling at the merchants under his breath. He wants to smack them all that almost killed them together. When they finally reached the entrance, one guy from the caravan asked if the big wall was to keep all those monsters out. Good question, bro. The guard, named Daryl, got really surprised when he saw Leon. He shouted down, asking how long Leon had been gone and who these new faces were. Leon answered back, saying these people were just a merchant caravan. He said he had met them while getting firewood and told Daryl they had already talked to the village chief. Even with that, Daryl didn't look convinced. He said he believed Leon's word, but pointed out nobody had reported any caravan coming. He worried that the new people might actually be bandits dressed up as merchants. Uh-oh. Byron hated that. He fired back, saying they were just lost, and it was the village chief's own fault for giving such bad directions. But Daryl was not going to change his mind. He kept saying that the safety of the village was number one, and if the travelers couldn't prove who they were, they had to leave. Ouch. The merchant had enough. He got really mad and said the least Daryl could do was get the village chief out here to sort things. Leon stepped in, telling Daryl that security was important, but these travelers were needed. He said he even heard the forest itself calling for help. He thought something strange was happening with the land, and that they should pay attention. Leon made a big promise. If anything went bad, he would take care of it himself. Finally, they got in. The story moved to inside the big village hall. The caravan, the merchants, Byron, and the others sat with the village chief and some locals. The chief was an older dude and was having a great time hearing Leon's promise that he could handle everything himself. He laughed and said Leon was making big claims. Byron said the chief was being kind of dramatic, but one merchant was just so relieved to be somewhere safe. Baxter, yep, the tough guy, told everyone that Leon was way stronger than 10 mercenaries put together. But of course, things couldn't stay calm for long. Baxter started asking questions about all the big walls and defenses he had seen outside the village. He said he knew there were monsters from Uruks out there, but all this protection seemed like too much. Was the village getting ready for an actual war? He put that question right to the chief. Dang, Baxter always knew how to drop a bomb at the worst time. Even Leon thought this was a terrible moment for such a question. It went quiet for a minute. Then, the chief spoke up. He agreed that war was terrible. He looked at Baxter and guessed from his look that Baxter had probably fought in a war before, maybe from Concade. The chief talked about how, in his younger years, war was a big deal, a fight for freedom from Uruks who treated humans like animals. But now, he thought war only brought pain and pointless losing. He hoped they could avoid that kind of tragedy here and said the walls were just there because everyone wanted peace so badly. But Tilrock wasn't buying that. He called the chief's logic twisted and said he was just using nice words to talk about war stuff. He also pointed out Leon, saying he was basically a monster. Tilrock wanted to know how the chief could defend having a creature so strong it could squash a troll with its hands in just one hit. He said that was not normal at all. And since Concade knew a thing or two about war, he wanted proof that there weren't more things like Leon hiding somewhere. Byron didn't like that word, horrific, and Baxter said those words were way too hard. Leon, poor dude, looked really hurt, but then Leon spoke up. He said he understood why nobody could trust a guy who looked half human, half ogre. He realized that if people thought he was dangerous, they'd go and tell everyone the village was a scary place. But, Leon said, he had a way to show them he wasn't a threat. He wanted to bring them to meet his mom. So, the group walked over to Leon's house. On the way, Tilrock started complaining that something smelled really bad. Leon just shrugged and explained he had peed around to keep monsters far away. Dude, that's one way to make things safe. When Leon got to the front door, he called for his mom, saying he was back. He went inside, apologized for being late, and said errands in the village made him slow. His mom was young with blonde hair, and she happily told the group to come in fast. Suddenly, the scene changed. The story flashed back to 15 years before, at Byron Village. Back then, the village chief was much younger. One night, a guard rushed to get him, saying there was big trouble by the wooden wall. The guards weren't sure what was going on and told the chief to see for himself. When the chief arrived, he froze in fear. There, at the barrier, stood a giant monster with glowing red eyes. The chief immediately recognized it. It was an ogre, and not just any ogre, but Robo, the wolf of the forest and the butcher of the central continent. Yikes. The chief knew this was worst-case scenario. He shouted for everyone to drop their weapons and back far away. He didn't want to mess with Robo because the monster guide said he was the most dangerous creature ever. The chief ordered them to get all the siege weapons fast in case the ogre tried to break in. But then something really strange happened. One villager pointed out that the ogre was just standing there. It didn't attack. It didn't even blink. Hours went by. The chief started to wonder if there was something different about this monster. Like, did the monster guide say ogres could just chill all night if they wanted something besides hunting? Nobody knew what was up. Suddenly, the ogre looked down at the ground, at someone just lying there. Everyone froze. Then, out of nowhere, the big ogre just turned around and left. It jumped far away from the village. The people waited, super nervous. But when nothing happened, one noticed the person left behind on the ground. So they all hurried over and, oh, surprise! The person was still alive. Time snapped forward again to now, inside Leon's house by the edge of Byron Village. The story suddenly felt a lot more normal for a second. The travelers, Leon and his young blonde-haired mom were all sitting around a table. Leon was going high on some cheese and ham, loving every bite. His mom told him to slow down. She apologized to the guests for the simple meal and said sorry again for their rough journey. She explained that the visit was a surprise. Her son never said he was bringing so many people, and she was sorry if they weren't comfortable. Then she looked right at Baxter, wanting to know why everyone had come all the way out here. Tilrock whispered to Baxter about her weird accent. Baxter whispered back that the accent sounded like it belonged only to fancy royal people. Tilrock just grumbled, annoyed at the villagers again. What the hell are all those villagers bastard, hiding more than an ogre living like a normal person here? But Leon's mom seemed to totally understand their suspicious looks. She said her life with Leon was nothing close to normal anyway. She explained that even having strangers see them was risky, and there wasn't much she could say to make it better. She promised that Leon's wild actions outside wouldn't be repeated and asked what more she could possibly do for them. Baxter noticed something in her words. It was like she was negotiating, almost like a merchant. She even said something about merchant guilds and how they should be able to make deals quickly when they are often together with a merchant. Tilrock was not impressed. He got angry. He yelled that this conversation was not something they could just deal over, and that the noble woman was dodging his real questions. Tilrock said that as a guy from Concade, he had to know the truth. No more games. Baxter tried to calm him down, saying that Leon had just saved their lives and they should just leave it at that and be grateful. But dude, Tilrock was not letting it go. This kind of knight is someone who always dies first, period. He went off, ignoring Baxter and shouting at Leon's mother. Why was a lady of her status hiding out in a place like this? And why did she have a half-human, half-ogre son? Leon's mom tried to calm things down, telling him his words hurt, but Tilrock just kept going. He told her to look at herself. He said it was pathetic to be stuck out here, unable to handle the outside world's craziness. Tilrock went big and emotional. He yelled about war, how his friends back in Concade were dying in endless fighting, and how countries were calling up demons to help just to win a dumb piece of land. He promised never to forget the horrible things that happened in wars, and said he was disgusted to find a hybrid like Leon, even in the sticks. At that moment, Baxter shouted, "Tilrock!" and finally got him to shut up. Baxter took over and started asking Leon's mom, with a lot more respect, if she and her son were really the secret the village was protecting behind all those giant walls. He wanted to know what happened. What made a royal noble hide with an ogre kid? Baxter asked if maybe she had a grudge, or why someone like her would ever let a scary monster be the father of her kid. Right then, Leon's mom started to look really upset. She tried to explain it wasn't like that, and that telling the whole truth was hard, and Leon wanted to jump in to protect her. But Tilrock started again, this time with mean sarcasm. He said maybe she just liked being with monsters from other races. Dude, this guy's mouth is too much, he needs a proper slap. And then, suddenly, Leon's mom screamed, "No, Leon!" And all at once, boom. Tilrock got hit by some crazy, invisible slam and went down super hard. Blood appeared, and he was gasping. Leon's mom fell to her knees, trying to stop him from getting hurt. Leon was the one who had attacked. He was standing up, breathing hard, and there was this weird red spider mark glowing on his chest. Leon looked freaked out by what he'd done, and Baxter was quick to grab Tilrock. Leon started to change, getting scarier, with sharp teeth and longer ears. After that, Baxter pulled out his sword and walked toward him with anger. Leon warned Baxter not to get close to his mom, yet Baxter made it clear his sword wasn't for Leon's mom, only for Leon, because after what he saw, Leon didn't look very human at all. Then, he hit Leon with his blade. Leon's mom screamed at her son, but Baxter explained that his attack was only meant to slow Leon down and not to hurt him for real. But get this! His sword didn't do a thing to Leon's ogre body. The blade couldn't even cut him. Baxter guessed it was the ogre blood. A normal attack just wasn't going to cut it. Literally. Right then, Baxter noticed that Leon was just staring at his mom. He realized she might be the next to get hurt. Feeling a sudden killing intent, Baxter jumped into a block position, ready for a hit. That's when Leon grabbed Baxter and tossed him like he weighed nothing. Then Leon jumped after him, and the fight moved outside, underneath the full moon in the forest. It was a wild battle. Baxter was doing his best, but Leon was just crazy strong. But Baxter also saw something smart. Even while losing his mind, Leon kept the fight far away from his mom and the house. He was picking his moves so he wouldn't hurt her, even if he looked totally out of control. That was some wild and thoughtful ogre power. Back in the dark forest, Leon was fighting Baxter up close. He attacked fast, but Baxter dodged him like a pro. This really surprised Leon. How was Baxter so good? Actually, Baxter also realized something crazy. Leon was already copying his moves and fighting style like a mirror. Dude, Leon was learning everything he saw in just seconds. In the end, Leon slammed Baxter with a strong hit and knocked him down. Tilrock, still hurting, watched and got worried. It looked like Baxter was toast. Suddenly, Leon's mom came rushing out to see what was happening. Just as Leon was about to land the final punch on Baxter, something magical happened. Drops of light started falling from the sky. That was wild. In that moment, Baxter realized he had seen enough. He figured out that Leon had used only a quick look to study, understand, and beat every move Baxter had. He thought if it wasn't for the glowing green pendant in his hand, this battle would have already been over, and not in a good way for him. Baxter was honestly amazed. He said only someone incredible, like Leon's mother, could raise a kid with and have a pendant to control him. He remembered when Leon's mom gave him this life-saving pendant. Leon slowly calmed down. The red mark on his chest faded, and Baxter, being a straight-up professional, apologized for everything. He explained that as someone from Concade, he had to be careful about hybrids because they can be used as weapons, but he admitted he had acted too careful and, honestly, too rude since this was his first time seeing a case like Leon. Baxter told Leon he didn't see him as a scary weapon anymore. He saw a smart, polite kid who belonged in the village. He promised to keep the secret so Leon and his mother would stay safe. Leon chilled out completely and turned back to his normal self. His mom, super tired, called him to come inside and rest. Leon ran to her and hugged her tight, crying his heart out and calling her, "Mom!" Yeah, it got emotional, dude. Meanwhile, outside, Tilrock was on the ground, hurting and cursing the whole situation. He was just done with everything. Yeah, you are the fucking reason this whole mess happened, bro. The next day, it was time for the caravan to leave. Leon's mom was home making food and setting the table, but she didn't eat. Instead, she just waited by the door, hoping Leon would come back soon after he finished guiding the travelers out of the woods. Out with the caravan, Leon was leading them down the safest path. Byron, of course, was grumbling that the trip home was somehow even harder than the trip to the village. Baxter wondered why they were taking such a weird, twisty road. Leon explained that he was choosing the way because the forest told him it was safest, which was a strange thing to say, but he sounded super sure. He promised that once they got past this area, things would get easy. Now, as the group got near the border to Helbron, they looked around. Tilrock was still unconscious, so one of the merchants was carrying him like luggage, and Baxter said he'd pay him well for that job. This guy is a pain in the ass, damn. Anyway, Leon was walking with them, leading the way and being super helpful. Leon started calling Baxter Uncle, which was pretty funny, and apologized for all the bumpy roads. But he encouraged them, saying the city was close. Baxter felt better and asked if Leon was tired from fixing his house at night, but Leon said it was nothing. He was pretty happy. He told Baxter he kept thinking about all the stories he'd heard about the big city, a place he only smelled from far away but never visited. Baxter was shocked Leon had never heard those stories before. As it turned out, Leon explained the villagers, and especially his mom, never talked about that stuff around him. Byron guessed the reason. Probably, everyone was scared that someone as innocent as Leon could get tricked by anyone in the city. But Byron added that nobody can really learn about life without a little trouble. Hard times are part of growing up. Then Leon started talking about another story, about Uncle Varen, a merchant who knew the forest extremely well and had a skillful bargaining ability to get discounts. Leon really wanted to learn that skill too. The merchant rolled his eyes, saying maybe it was a bad idea to teach Leon about hard bargains. He might end up using them in the wrong way someday. Baxter then asked Leon if he had ever left Byron Village at all, and if the chief kept him trapped there. Leon said he wasn't forced. Staying was his own choice. He explained that sometimes it felt like the big village wall was really just there to keep him safe because nobody else would accept him for being different. But there was another reason too. His mom lived alone, and after he was born, she couldn't walk anymore. Even though she always acted strong in front of him, the villagers told him she had been a noble lady from a big, fancy family before. Leon knew his mom gave up her old life to take care of him, so there was no way he could just leave her to follow his own dreams. The merchant felt sorry for him. Leon also admitted that he was super hard for his mom to raise because, as a little ogre kid, all he wanted to do was eat raw meat. The merchant was so shocked about that, dude. That sounded gross. Suddenly, Baxter switched gears and asked Leon straight, had he been told to spy on the Veyron trade route? Leon tried to pretend it was all just luck that they met, but Baxter didn't buy it. The merchant said they were grateful for Leon saving them, but they needed to know the truth. Was Leon working under orders for some secret business? Leon promised it wasn't anything scary or about war. Finally, Leon told the real story. The forest around their village was full of Uruk bandits. There weren't thousands, but even a small group of Uruks was scary enough to wreck merchants, travelers, and guards, which was disrupting all trade, and that was how the village made a living. Baxter now got it. The reason for all the secrecy was to keep the village safe and alive. He realized Leon was marking the forest with his own scent, like a big "keep out" sign, to scare off enemies, which Leon confirmed. Leon said that sure, the village walls helped a little, but the real reason the bandits vanished was because everyone was scared of the ogre of the forest, him. Baxter then asked if Leon did all this just for the village's reputation, but Leon said no, there was something even bigger going on. Leon said the Uruks in the area were acting weirder than ever. They had started taming monsters like gnolls and trolls, and even changing the forest's shape. To Leon, it felt like the whole forest was crying for help. He tried his best to sound cheerful, saying everything would turn out fine and that he could handle any trouble himself if he had to. But then, he suddenly stopped talking. He saw something up ahead and pointed. There it was! They had made it to the city of Ridden. Leon led the caravan all the way to the city entrance. At the gates, Baxter said goodbye to Leon. He thanked Leon for guiding them safely and said their friendship was special, even though they were from different races. One of the merchants wished that Leon could someday travel outside his village as he wanted. Leon just laughed quietly, maybe not really believing it, but the merchant told him not to give up. Sometimes opportunities appear in funny ways. Then he suggested that Leon join the Noon Circus Troupe, a circus group that accepts people of all different races, where he could travel the world and also get paid. Baxter was surprised the merchant knew about that, but the merchant acted all grumpy and pretended to be insulted. Leon waved by as the caravan went into the city. But as soon as they were out of sight, Leon's face changed. He got really serious and worried, turning towards the forest. He just hoped everything was okay back at his home. He took off fast, heading back to his village. Suddenly, there was a flashback from 8 years earlier. Little Leon was only 5 years old, and a man named Nilsson was talking to him. He teased Leon, saying he had grown huge for his age. Leon's mom was working hard, cooking meat. Then Nilsson's mood turned sad. He talked about his own childhood, how he had lost his family, home, everything, after some lord and knights ruined his life. He was only 10 when he escaped into the forest. He told Leon that Byron Village was the only place that would take him and Leon's mother, because everyone there had their own share of pain and loss. Back to the present. Leon was running fast back to the village. But suddenly he stopped cold. He saw smoke coming from the direction of the village. Panic hit him hard. He started sprinting faster, calling desperately for his mother. There were no signs of monsters around. When he got closer, he saw the big village barrier on fire. He felt a little relief because his own home wasn't on fire yet, but as he ran through the woods, Leon noticed the smell of the burning wasn't natural. Someone had mixed incense in the fire to hide the scent of the village. This was not any old accident. Someone did this on purpose. Leon started to worry even more, racing as quickly as he could. Suddenly on the way, Leon found Mr. Nilsson, the man from his childhood memory, fatally wounded and shot with arrows. Nilsson was barely alive, but he called out Leon's name. Leon tried to lift him up and carry him to safety, but Nilsson stopped him. Knowing he didn't have much time left, he gave him some strong advice before dying. He asked Leon, no matter what he sees in the village, he must stay calm and keep his mind clear. After Nilsson died, Leon continued on, feeling super sad but even more determined. He kept replaying those last words in his mind as he finally reached the edge of the village. But what he saw next was way worse than anything he could have imagined. The village barriers were under attack, but not by crazy wild monsters. This was a real, organized army of monsters. The villagers' archers stood in the barriers, shooting arrows up at the monsters, while some climbed up with ladders. For a second, Leon was shocked. This was a full-on army, not just a small band of monster troublemakers like he used to see. On the wall, Commander Kane was giving orders, telling everyone to target the trolls who were carrying ladders up to the gate. Soldiers fired again and again, but the attackers kept coming. Kane couldn't believe how a simple Uruk gang had turned into such a huge force so fast. He was sure someone must be pulling the strings behind the scenes. Suddenly, one soldier pointed and yelled in fear. Far away, a massive, scary creature with glowing red eyes showed up, riding a huge beast called a warg. The sight terrified everyone. Nobody had ever seen an Uruk tame a warg before. Kane figured out that this was not just any Uruk. He was from the wastelands, and those types only appear in the worst battles. Just then, an arrow hit one of the defenders on the wall and he screamed. Kane realized that this was no ordinary Uruk attack. The arrow had a message. He quickly told his men to stop the bleeding as the enemy commander gave more orders. The Uruk's commander told them the message was meant for the little ogre, which meant Leon for sure. He urged them to send out Leon right now. Down below, the fight was still crazy as the army climbed the walls, but the defenders put up a big fight, firing volleys of arrows. The Uruk commander's helper made fun of the village defenders' bravery, well, until he got hit by an arrow himself and died on the spot. The enormous Uruk commander got off his beast and glared at the humans. At the same time, one of the defenders picked up that arrow with the message and was surprised. The writing wasn't even in the Uruk language. Suddenly, the Uruks brought out a group of human prisoners. Kane was about to order another arrow attack, but suddenly one of his soldiers shouted for him to stop and to look down. Now, everyone saw what the Uruks were doing. They were bringing out all the village's scouts, including Daryl, as prisoners and making them stand in front as human shields. Kane's legs buckled in shock. He spotted his own son, Daryl, among the hostages. He was heartbroken and just couldn't believe this was happening. Someone warned Kane that the enemy was almost at the main gate and told him to act fast. Down below, a field commander told his men to block the entrance with their bodies. If they had to, if the gate fell, the whole village would be lost. Inside the village, some people were hiding in a building. One villager, scared out of his mind, asked why they were hiding instead of going out to fight. Another pointed out that their earlier fights against monsters had never been easy, and fighting head-on now would only mean death. Also, clearly, the attackers were after something special. Outside, the Uruks brought up a giant wooden log and started battering the main gate with it. The defenders groaned as they tried to keep the gate shut, but those blows were strong and violent. Out beyond the wall, the gigantic Uruk commander spoke with a mystery ally. This person was very impressed with how the battle was going. The mystery man said the Uruk commander's combat experience would soon break the village's defenses, and, just as promised, he would help him with his own hunt. Back on top of the burning village wall, things got super intense. Kane's soldiers were shouting at him to make a move to save everyone, but Kane was torn up inside. His own son, Daryl, was out there among the hostages, and when Daryl called out, "Father," with a weak voice, Kane started to break down. It was a brutal choice. One warrior came over and told Kane they understood it was tough with his son out there, but they didn't have any other options, and he was sorry for it. Kane couldn't order the archers to fire, so one of his men just took action and told the archers to get ready on his own. But before arrows could fly, boom! Someone flew down from the trees, landing in the middle of the Uruk army with a crash that shook the whole field. It was Leon, and he wasn't just showing up quietly. The powerful shock of his arrival knocked monsters everywhere, instantly making chaos. The Uruk commander grinned and said the little ogre finally showed up. On the walls, the defenders were stunned. Was that really Leon? The shadowy ally began speaking with the Uruk commander, stating that the trap had worked and Leon had fallen right into it. Meanwhile, after Leon jumped into the thick of battle, he attacked the commander left and right with insane speed. He spotted Daryl, wounded on the ground, calling out for help. Leon ran to him, calling Daryl brother, and getting seriously angry at the sight. With that, Leon went wild, fighting harder than ever. But the commander is way beyond ruthless. He killed Daryl, who struggled to live, and mocked Leon for his stupidity when he saw his friend die. The Uruk commander started chatting from afar, throwing shade at him. He said he couldn't believe a rare half-ogre, the fiercest of monsters, lived way out here instead of some battlefield. The Uruk boss asked if Leon ever wondered why nobody had come to try and kill him until now. Suddenly, the story flashed back for a bit. We got to see who this boss Uruk really was. He came from the wastelands of Tuvenia, a brutal place where races battled in huge wars. These Uruks were part human, part Uruk, war mercenaries known for their crazy skills, smart battle plans, and wild guerrilla tactics. But making hybrids like this only worked with some old lost magic, so there weren't many of them. When the big war ended, these warriors had no money, so they started taking dangerous jobs, battling monsters, and guarding forests to survive. But someday, they met the infamous ogre called the Butcher of the Central Continent and fought him. Most of them died out. Only one was left. Now, that one survivor became known as Uruk, a name for the whole race, but now just for him. He settled in a forest in Arna, just waiting for revenge against the enemy of his people, Leon's father and family. Back in the present, the Uruk commander ordered every monster and soldier to attack Leon fast, with no mercy. He shouted for their troll subjugation squad and their null monster surround squad to move at once. But all those plans barely slowed Leon down. He was just too strong, sending enemies flying while the army started to panic. Up on the wall, the village defenders watched in shock. They saw the Uruk force had stopped aiming at the village and were all fighting Leon instead. They started worrying for Leon. Could even he handle all those enemies solo? Cain watched as Leon fought, until suddenly, Leon got caught in a trap that pinned his foot. The Uruk commander himself jumped into the fray. It became a vicious duel. They punched and smashed, each monster as tough as steel. Leon finally hit him with a huge blow, badly wounding the Uruk leader and knocking him over. The Uruk chief lost some limbs, but he grinned, saying the pain was worth it. He gasped and declared the time had come. He looked at Leon, who started yelling like a true monster, and said that once Leon's true nature woke up, everyone he loved would disappear. Leon would lose control, become a wild beast, and in the end, be left all alone. That was his last message before passing out, and then Leon's body started to change, becoming even more beast-like. The soldiers saw their leader had fallen, got scared, and quickly called for everyone to fall back and get out of the way. They knew with their leader gone and Leon raging, they were doomed if they stayed. But suddenly, Leon lost his balance and passed out. After the wild brawl, Cain and the defenders came down from the wall to check things out. They found Leon, knocked out but still alive. Cain was amazed. One guy pointed out how Leon had taken so many attacks, and yet by the time they got there, he was already healing, way faster than any normal ogre. Cain wondered if Leon would really wake up, since the Uruk weapons were full of neurotoxin so strong it could drop a troll. He said they had a ton of questions to ask Leon for sure. Suddenly, the defeated Uruk commander spoke up from the ground, surprising everyone. Someone blamed another for not checking if the boss was dead, but the Uruk just said not to worry. He could feel death coming from all the blood he was losing. Since he was dying anyway, he said it was easier to interrogate a guy with nothing left to lose. Cain started his questions. He accused the Uruk of gathering all these bandits and pointed to the special message arrow, saying it was not in Uruk language, so it was for someone else. Someone who could read it. Like Leon. Cain explained that Leon never even left the forest, so he couldn't have crossed the Uruk out in the wastelands. Cain then directly asked what his connection was to Leon and why he was after him. The Uruk boss laughed, saying he could already tell how the villagers would treat Leon after all this. Since his revenge was already done, he would answer everything openly. The Uruk revealed that the humans' idea that they had hidden and protected Leon was a big joke. While they built their giant walls thinking nobody could get in, the truth was the Butcher of the Central Continent, Leon's father, had started to move again. They even found proof that a blue dragon was behind everything, which sent huge shockwaves through everyone at the time. The dying Uruk commander kept talking, and man, did he drop some wild info. He pointed out something everyone knew. Ogres are supposed to fight to the bitter end, and never bow to anyone. But there was one legendary butcher ogre, a total monster in his own class, who had actually chosen to surrender. That's when the Uruk leader got obsessed. Why would a beast like that ever give up? He explained that one day, he figured it out. There was a human woman in the story. Hearing this, Cain was totally shocked and asked how he could know such a thing. The Uruk boss replied that he could smell it, the butcher's blood, and the woman's blood, mixed inside Leon. Now the Uruk's real plan came out. He said he had told all his Uruk soldiers never to attack the hybrid, meaning Leon. Instead, he set them up all over the forest to mess with the villagers. He built a perfect maze out there so no outsiders would dare enter. The big wall everyone trusted really just helped the Uruks keep the secret. And guess what? The forest was theirs all along. So, the whole time everyone thought they were hiding Leon, but they were really just giving him time to grow up into something huge. The Uruk wondered, as he was dying, if it was really about revenge, or if he just wanted Leon to end up an outcast too. With that, the Uruk boss finally died. Elsewhere, the elders in the village were in deep discussion. One old guy said Leon's mom raised him well, but his real ogre side was something nobody could control. What if he changed more? Could anyone stop him? Another said the Uruk army couldn't stop Leon. They survived today because of him, but if he lost control, they'd all be toast. The chief shouted at them to quit arguing. But Cain, still broken after losing his son Daryl, insisted that the village couldn't just hope for the best. He told the chief they needed a backup plan in case Leon went wild, warning that dragon hunters would come looking for them soon. The chief tried to calm Cain, saying it was tragic what happened to Daryl, but Leon was only 13 and couldn't control everything. The chief wanted Cain to focus on their real priorities as villagers. Cain was too upset and said they needed to act before something happened. The chief warned him to hush, reminding him that Leon might be listening. And guess what? Leon was awake and heard every word. He sat, wondering if the elders were fighting because of him. Was it because he lost his mind and went wild? Was this what his father was like? Leon suddenly hated it. He hated being seen as a monster, hated that image stuck in everyone's mind. When the elders found out he was awake, they were pretty shocked. Later, the chief took a walk with Leon. He tried to cheer him up, saying there was nothing to worry about and he'd heal soon. He admitted they had been late sending news to his mother, Leona, but he hoped she would understand. The chief told Leon, for real, that he had saved the village. He said he was proud and super grateful. Leon took this calmly and thanked him. The chief even gave him a bag of antidote herbs and told him to make drinks with them at every meal, because those Uruk poisons did not mess around. Leon promised to tell his mom and said he had to go. She was waiting, and he wanted to make sure everyone was okay inside. The chief smiled and let him go. Leon raced back to his house in the moonlight. When he landed, he saw his mom waiting outside. He quickly called out, telling her it wasn't safe to be by the fence at night. But Leona stopped him. She said she was fine and that there was nothing wrong there. But she told him the problem wasn't outside. She said she heard that he had jumped in during all the chaos, even though she begged him not to do it. She also said someone told her Nilsson had died at the outer wall and asked if that was what sent Leon over the edge. Leon remembered all the kind things Nilsson did for him as a kid. He even wished Leon could be his real son. Leon apologized for worrying his mom and admitted Nilsson's death was just too much. That man was special to him. Nilsson's last advice was to stay calm and never lose his mind, no matter what he faced. Leon questioned if Nilsson was trying to protect him from the outside world, or maybe just the truth about himself. He then looked at his mom and asked her flat out if his rage was something he got from his father. His mother seemed super hurt and begged him to stop, apologizing because she didn't know how to answer. Leon called after her as she backed away, but then grabbed her in a big hug while she kept apologizing. Far away, over in the kingdom of Saren, in Barenfels, things were heating up. The local baron was furious, shouting at his knight Herman. He was mad that the dragon hunt news had been exposed and called it nonsense, saying it was a useless waste of time, almost a joke. He hated hearing arguments about tradition and honor, saying they didn't get what was practical or possible, especially compared to Helbrun's real power. Why bother looking for some legendary blue dragon anyway? But the baron trusted Herman, calling him his practical knight. He couldn't ignore official orders, but at least Herman made sure there were no problems from the authorities for a little while. Herman also said there were lots of weird things about this hunt, more than expected. And here's the big reveal. Herman told the baron they discovered a half-ogre, half-human hybrid had been born. The baron was thrilled. Now he believed this hunt would actually be interesting, practical, as he said. Herman agreed coldly, but in his head, he thought about the day when the Baron's own head would be part of his collection. Ouch. This story is too dark. Over in city, things were heating up. Some mercenaries and tough guys were getting together, and one of them, Tilrock, was not having a great time. He stopped a masked man and threw some sarcasm, saying he doubted the so-called honorable knights would find it easy to deal with a dude like him. He also noticed that 3 people were following their group. Tilrock kept complaining to the masked man, saying, "Bro, this is so not what I signed up for. The job was supposed to be quick and easy." The masked man was not having it. He cut Tilrock down with some cold words, basically telling him to know his place or he might not even get to start the mission. Tilrock still wanted to know if their group would survive when dealing with a half-human, half-ogre in the woods. Bitch, Tilrock is never tired to mess with Leon. I hope Leon slap him again till he died this time. Anyway, the masked man just muttered, "Practical feasibility." Seriously, these people love that phrase. They will do anything to practically success in this mission. Meanwhile, out in the forest, Leon was alone. He knew he couldn't go back to his village for a while, so he had to hunt for food before it got too dark. And today, Leon realized something. He was way better at hunting than he ever thought. He got a wild boar in a super slick move, even though he was never trained for this. He guessed his mother must have tried to raise him to be as human as possible and stayed away from teaching him to hunt. He understood why. She was afraid of seeing his father's monster-like instincts in action. But now, as he finished the hunt, he realized he could move like a beast, trick prey, and go for the weak spot just because of his dad's blood. Back in Byron Forest, the masked man's group was trying to make their way through the dark, twisty woods. Tilrock kept whining about how the place was like a never-ending maze filled with armed goblins and even trained trolls. The masked man was like, "A trained troll? Really?" Tilrock said it did sound like overkill, maybe something from a war zone. The masked man said he thought the race war talk was over the top, but Tilrock insisted this did feel like a war, especially with all those dangerous monster types everywhere. The forest became more violent day by day. Tilrock also explained that even remote villages around here were connected to the Merchant Guild, but lately, things exploded thanks to the famous Uruk of Trovenia, who stirred up all this orc drama. The masked man nodded. He remembered that Uruk was a top dog from the old race war days. Tilrock was curious. Why would someone so important show up in this little forest? He asked the masked man what he thought about it, hinting that this wasn't just about hunting a wild beast. There must be something big hidden in this forest that could really start a war. But hey, they were almost at their destination. Not far away, the masked man lackey snuck up, grabbed a goblin, and asked him for answers. But the goblin said he had already spilled anything he knew. After the Uruk commander died when fighting the half-ogre, he didn't know anything else. One of the soldiers realized, now that the Uruk was dead, that Herman's judgment was right. This wasn't just a simple village at all. Besides, Lord Herman went to another direction with Tilrock, the Concade mercenary, in another place that seemed to have a connection to their new prey. So they need to focus on this village for now. The group was a bit shocked by this sudden change, since they were all supposed to meet up at the village entrance. But their boss didn't explain further. He just guessed Herman had found something more exciting there, then ordered everyone to follow his plan and get close to their prey house. There was no room for mistake. Inside, Leonia, well, it's Leon's mom, was doing her usual housework. When she remembered back to the moment Leon asked about his father, the memory clearly made her sad. Suddenly, she felt someone trying to break into the house. Tilrock barged in first. He looked around expecting to find the house empty, but instead, there she was, Leonia, calm as ever. Tilrock tried to play it cool, acting sarcastic, and apologized for disturbing the noble lady of amazing beauty. Leonia wasn't surprised to see him. She said plainly that it had been a long time since he visited, and that her son was living quietly. There was nothing left for him to do here. But Tilrock kept poking, making gross jokes about her living with an ogre, calling her worse than the village's worst women. Then he announced himself for real. As Tilrock of Ridden, a Concade warrior, he was now meeting with the princess of the Arcadian Empire, Princess Pessler. He bowed down and somehow looked like mocking Leon's mom and calling her real name. Wow, does this mean Leon have a royal blood inside him? Plot twist. Suddenly, the masked man arrived. Herman himself! He said he was shocked to find such a famous woman living in a small house like this. He said Leonia's sacrifice was noble, but that she shouldn't waste her life in this place. He introduced himself as a knight of Soiran Baron, and flat out asked her to come back home to Arcadian Empire. Leonia answered calmly, saying she didn't know how her secret got out, but it was too late. If the Empire had really wanted her home, she would have come a long time ago. The Empire she know would find her in one day if they want. Leonia said her life here was already settled here, as she knew the Empire already let her go as the princess. Yet Herman replied that, officially, she had been declared dead, but the Empire never gave up hope, so actually she could go home anytime if she wanted. Then Herman's voice turned dark. He said Leonia wouldn't need to worry anymore. He would erase that filthy blood. Outside, Herman boss lackeys explained the plan to his men. He said the target Leon lived here all the time. Even if Leon was a hybrid, he acted like a wild ogre, not a real human. The boss thought this was good news. He was scared Leon might be too human and hard to kill, but as things stood, 13-year-old Leon was just an animal in his eyes. At its core, their target is no different from an ogre's pattern. He ordered everyone to get into ogre hunting formation and said it was time to score some results before Master Herman arrived. Meanwhile, Leon was coming home, carrying his big, stinky boar. He thought about how his mom hated the smell of raw meat. He even decided to ask Aunt Pin to load it with spices next time. But Leon couldn't shake his worries. His mom was sad. She avoided all his big questions lately, and deep down, he felt like it was all his fault. But still, Leon kept walking home, hoping he could make his mom feel better soon. When suddenly, bam, he was ambushed. Out of nowhere, a bunch of masked attackers surrounded him. Leon barely had time to react and got hurt right away. But dude, he fought back hard. He tried to look around, figure out where these people came from, and realized he couldn't smell or sense them before the attack started. This was no accident. This was an organized hunt. Leon was dodging blows left and right, but one masked man still managed to slash him deep from behind. Leon dropped to his knees, hurt and confused. Why is this happening? I was hiding in peace. Why are people chasing me again? He felt like life was super unfair. He could easily fight them back, but deep down, he don't want to turn into a monster. Just as one attacker raised his sword to finish Leon off, something changed in Leon's eyes. Instead of giving up, he showed some insane determination. He was not going down that easy. Inside the house, Tilrock, the sarcastic mercenary, was mocking Herman in his mind, calling him predictable and whining about how nobles like him were all the same. He blamed Herman for losing his cool and said that all Leonia's noble looks were just a show. Well, he don't care what those two noble thought, because things were about to go his way. Leonia, though, told them flat out, the only blood that would be spilled tonight would be the visitors. Suddenly, Herman looked sharply at the door. In that instant, Leon smashed into the room. He reached for Herman, but then stopped just short. Herman took advantage and aimed a sword right at Leon, but Leon blocked the attack. Herman was shocked. How did Leon move so fast? Where did he learn to fight like that? Their blades sparked, and the force of their clash stunned Tilrock, making him wonder if Herman was hiding even more strength. He doesn't know that Herman was this strong to block that monster ogre attack. Meanwhile, Leon realized just how serious this was. Herman was a real swordmaster. Herman's sword glowed as he stood between Leonia and Leon, and Leon's mother cried out his name, panicking for her son. Leonia desperately begged Leon to listen and leave, saying, "You have to hide! They can't hurt me, but you need to go!" But Herman attacked with a powerful energy strike, and Leon screamed in pain. Herman told him that next attack, he would show absolutely no mercy. But before that, he would let Leon say any last words he wanted. He actually wondered how some beast could fight him, even if Leon was just a rookie. Flashback for a second. Back in the Byron forest, one of the masked attackers was panting. He said he'd never liked killing kids, but his buddy said he didn't act like it. They both looked at Leon, noticing he was a little smaller than a full-grown ogre. The man told Leon, "It's pointless to fight. You can't change what you are. You're only alive to be hunted." But in one move, Leon shot forward and dodged the hit perfectly, stunning the man. Leon countered, wounding the attacker badly. The man's friend freaked out. Leon could somehow read their movements before they happened. They were sure he was supposed to be unconscious and going crazy with poison, but here he was, calm and fighting smart. Another attacker was angry and worried that the poison dart hadn't worked. He rushed to finish Leon quickly, but Leon stopped him cold. He revealed that he knew about the poison. They wanted to turn him into a wild monster to hunt, but he wasn't falling for that. The attackers were stunned. How was Leon so smart, and how did his voice echo with the forest around him? Then Leon demanded to know why they hated him so much, asking if being born was supposed to be a crime. With a chilling voice, he asked if the beasts and ogre these men killed before just lay down and died and surrendered when they faced it. Then he attacked them again. He chose to be a beast like the attackers thought, and turn into their biggest nightmare. Leon was moving so fast the attackers were terrified. He used the very poison that was meant for him, releasing it as a hallucinogenic vapor, and suddenly the hunters were the prey. None of them could even touch him. When one realized the smoke that had been hiding their scent had cleared, and now, Leon was running and leaving them there. One of the masked hunters panicked. If Leon got free, he might go straight for Master Herman, and that could never happen. Back to the present, and now Leon asked himself, am I a beast or a human? Did it even matter anymore? He wondered what he was supposed to be actually to live in this world. Why did everybody keep trying to kill him? Leon looked at her mother and said for the last time how he should be living right now. And there, her mother could only look at him. Her voice was silent. She knew how hurt it must be for Leon. Meanwhile, Herman was thinking it might be the moment to strike and kill Leon, but didn't care. He'd just interrogate his underlings later. He then addressed Leon, saying he was actually interested in what a beast thought for just a second, but then turned cold and ordered Leon to die right there in front of his mother, thinking that would break her spirit once and for all. Herman went on the attack, but Leon defended himself hard. He told Herman he would never allow him to do what he wanted. Leon blocked Herman's powerful blows, always keeping himself between Herman and his mom. He repeated, he wouldn't let anything happen to her. Herman grew angrier, while in the back, Tilrock was muttering that all this was nuts and that everyone who used a magical sword like Herman seemed to have anger issues. But secretly, Tilrock was happy. Things were going just as he planned. Leonia keeps begging Leon to run. She promises she would be fine. Suddenly, Leon made a smart move. He chose to hear his mother's word and leaped out of the house, pulling the fight far from his mother so nothing would happen to her. Herman, now absolutely annoyed. With a serious face, he gathered a massive amount of energy. He pulled out a glowing spear, powered it up with a huge charge, and hurled it straight at Leon. There was a massive explosion. In the forest, after that massive explosion from Herman's attack, the three masked men saw the blast from far away. He shouted, super hyped and also worried, that it had to be Master Herman who did that. Nobody else could pull off something that insane. He knew that Herman wasn't like other swordmasters. Instead of a fancy sword, Herman always carried a long spear, which most people said was a farmer's weapon. But Herman knew better. He only whipped it out when things were deadly serious, and everyone knew if he just used his spear, things were bad. Now, the whole group rushed at max speed, not caring about the scary night beast that might attack them. The first guy was like, we already messed up and let the ogre escape, but we all know how our boss will be way scarier than any wolf. Let's go! And the whole crew ran toward that huge explosion. They needed to find their boss and beg for mercy. Elsewhere, Leon ran through the forest, all dizzy and foggy from the poison. His body was moving mostly on instinct, and he started to wonder if this was his dad's hunter's nature taking over. His senses got sharp. He could feel the hunt in his blood. But suddenly, Herman's glowing spear chased him down, and boom, a huge blast hit Leon, hurting him badly. Back in the village, the chief and the elders were wondering what had happened tonight when they noticed weird smoke rising near Leonia's house. After such a short time of peace, they got nervous. One guy said Ken had always warned them, Leon's bloodline would bring big trouble. Some elders argued that they couldn't just stand around if Leon and Leonia were in danger. But the chief hesitated, thinking that if even Leon couldn't handle this fight, they probably couldn't do much better. That elder disagreed, claiming Leonia's safety might actually be a big risk for everybody in the village. Imagine if Leonia got hurt. Leon could lose his mind and kill all of them. He said if the guards couldn't handle it, he'd take care of it himself. That did it. Pretty much everyone decided to march out towards the smoke, moving fast. Meanwhile, in the forest, a pack of wolves was following the blood trail from Leon's injuries. The masked man's group reached the explosion site and found Master Herman, and instantly kneeled down. Their team leader admitted they were too late and that the whole mission was a loss. Herman didn't even blink. He just said maybe he should chop off their useless hands. The men were totally stressed, saying that even if Leon was smart, he was a beast first, instinct always wins. Herman replied that Leon had real human intelligence, so maybe things weren't so simple. Then, like a true boss, Herman said from a practical feasibility, there's that word again, viewpoint, maybe they deserve to be chopped off because of their failed mission. The masked man's group could only tremble and show their boss their hand to be chopped. When Herman raised his sword to actually cut their hands, the village elders and chief arrived. Herman smiled, almost like he'd been waiting for more bait to arrive. Dude, this Herman guy is way too evil. I hope Leon killed him for real. Anyway, a villager tried to talk with Herman, but the elders told him to be quiet. The bearded elders who urged them to help Leonia before whispered to the chief, asking if they even stood a chance against Herman and his crew. It was tense, bro. Suddenly, there was a flashback to the past, a much older scene. The chief, in his 40s, warned his son, challenging the Lord never ends well. But the son, fed up with brutal taxes and even worse treatment of the village girls, argued back. He reminded his father that he himself had wanted to fight back years ago. The son also admitted to knowing the old man had tried to help one of the girls escape. The father, worried, warned his son that letting hatred grow out of control was dangerous. In the end, the son apologized. But even so, the rebellion went way beyond what anyone expected. The lords acted fast and with terrifying violence. Lord Suwaran destroyed the people's rebellion with zero effort. He crushed it with pure rage and no mercy. The chief could do nothing but stare in horror as he saw his own son's body hanging as a warning to others. The lord didn't even blink. He left the chief in his job as quartermaster, as if nothing had happened. But the old man was scarred for life. Later, he ran away from Suwaran, never able to forget seeing 3 knights kill 400 militia dudes in a single night without a scratch on themselves. That trauma would never ever leave him. Back in the present, the chief knew the man standing in front of him was on the same caliber as the knight from Suwaran. Looking at the glowing sword, he was lost in these haunted memories when villagers started shouting, calling for their leader. Suddenly, one of Herman's men, moving freakishly fast, killed the man in the blink of an eye. The chief cried out in terror for his other friend, Henderson, but another enemy stabbed Henderson too, killing him instantly. Everything went completely off the rails. Herman looked as cold as ice. He told the chief that these deaths weren't anything to get worked up about. They were simply legitimate executions. He even said, all fake polite, that people should show good manners before a night. Then, with a mocking bow, he told the chief he was feeling generous. He would give him one chance. Was the chief absolutely sure he didn't want to see any more death tonight? Meanwhile, after that giant explosion, Leon was actually falling from the sky. He was dizzy and in pain, and as he dropped, his mind was racing with a storm of tough questions. Was his whole life a mistake? Should he just accept fate and let go, or should he fight to live on his own terms? He asked himself, what should he be, beast or man? While he spiraled down, a pack of wolf-like beasts with eerie red eyes gathered below. They were drawn to his blood, hungry and wild. Would they let him live, or would they tear him apart? Leon didn't even know. Ogres were still a big mystery, even to people who lived near them. His mother's words floated through his thoughts about how ogres were absolutely unique. Some monsters were fast, some strong, but ogres, they were on a different path. Ogres always acted alone, yet somehow they dominated the forest all by themselves. There was just no easy way to describe their nature. They were basically legendary, like something out of a wild story. Back at the village, things were not looking good. The village commander was talking when suddenly he spotted Herman approaching. Herman didn't waste time. He took the chief hostage, then launched a massive blue energy attack straight at the village wall, causing total destruction and a huge explosion. One of the men freaked out, scared about what might happen next, but Ken, the commander, stopped him. He told his men that Herman could have crushed them all if he wanted. So this attack was just a warning, a message to surrender, or else. They all agreed and decided to stall and try to buy time. Ken suddenly realized something weird. The village chief was now alone, without any of his guards. He called out to Jack, one of his team, and asked if the chief had come out here by himself. Jack said the chief did have guards, but nobody could find them now. That made Ken super worried. He ordered the search team to pull back, saying they needed to double-check who was actually with the chief, because this could be a trick. Ken bravely volunteered to go buy them some precious time, telling everyone that if things went wrong, all villagers should escape through the hidden underground tunnels. Facing fighters like Herman, human life didn't mean much in the eyes of these killers. As Ken stepped out, Herman was remembering something the Baron had said, a bunch of stuff about practical feasibility and how power can make a person think the world is just for them, as if there was nothing they couldn't do. The Baron said, it wasn't about taking credit, just being realistic. Nobody wins alone, and sometimes what matters is what you're willing to do to get results. Once you focus on what you want, you can get anything from this world. Far away in the smoky woods, Leon pulled it together and promised himself he wouldn't let things end the way his enemies wanted. He wasn't going down that easy. No matter what he is, he would just keep fighting. Yeah, that's our boy. Meanwhile, Ken faced Herman and shot an arrow. But well, Herman is too op, he just moves his head an inch to dodge that without a sweat. Ken says that a noble knight like him could never understand village life. He said he'd show Herman how real people deal with problems. This is our way of saying hello. But Herman saw right through that. He laughed and said stalling was pointless. Then he hit Ken with a violent blow, slashing his right hand and cutting it off, knocking him to the ground. The village chief, desperate, begged Herman to take him as bait and leave everyone else alone. But Herman lost patience and shouted, "Enough!" and then asked his underlings to finish off Ken with brutal sword strikes. Herman, cold and arrogant, announced that this was just the beginning, the real hunt was about to start. He then ordered his men to cover the forest with the scent of blood. But suddenly our ogre MC comes to the rescue. He blocks the attack and protects Ken. Herman just smiled. The chief and village commander as bait were working fine. He laughed at Leon. saying he was dumb for rushing away and leaving his mom just to save her. He got in Leon's face, sword glowing, and shot out a huge burst of whirlwind energy. Leon made some strange movements that Herman mocked, calling him weak and a disappointment, then delivered a brutal blow. But suddenly, out of nowhere, packs of wolf-like beasts swarmed from the forest and attacked Herman. He was shocked. These monsters came at him from every direction and ripped into him. Herman's companion also got the hit. He was coughing up blood, badly wounded and growing weaker every second. The place filled with dust and thick steam, and he realized it was all a trap. Where the fuck do all these monsters come from? Especially this steam and dust. The steam was mixed with drugs, set up just for them. Out from the fog, a gigantic beast with glowing red eyes appeared. A true scavenger of the dark woods. A werewolf-looking monster. One of the masked men died miserably. And behind it, Leon is just looking at them like a true king, ready to keep fighting. Wow, guys. Is Leon's power controlling other monsters? Or did he get monster taming class? The fight continues. Herman's companion was angry, thinking this was just like the last time Leon had tricked him in the woods. He hated being dragged around by this beast. But Leon pounced on him, this time with help from the scavenger beasts. Together they tore into the man, leaving him bleeding and trapped on the ground. The guy looked up at Leon, desperate and hurt, asking why Leon was doing this to him. Why leave him half dead instead of finishing him off before? Leon didn't say any words, he just let out a roar. The hunter realized just before he died that Leon wasn't like any other creature he'd ever fought. Leon was something completely new, and he wanted his enemies to see just how strong he really was. Leon just grabbed the man's head and lifted it, but then suddenly a big power slashed the man from behind and killed him. Well, we all know Herman is OP and won't die just from a couple of wolf monsters. So Herman jumped into the battle, launching a wide attack that killed his own lackeys but hit Leon too. The fight between Leon and Herman exploded again. Herman knocked Leon down and stood over him, grinning. He called Leon a hybrid beast and told him that he had no clue what it meant to be a knight. Whatever Leon does, he is just a weakling in front of a knight. He promised to teach Leon that painful lesson himself. Meanwhile, back inside Leon's house, Tilrock was busy trash-talking Leonia. He thought Leon had run away, crying, just because his mom told him to. Tilrock guessed Leonia was scared to be left alone with him. But Leonia, calm and gentle, said it was normal for a mom to worry about her child. She even asked Tilrock what she could do to make him forgive her son. Tilrock just made fun of her. He called her pathetic and reminded her that she used to be a princess from a rich kingdom, living the high life. How did she end up here? He said he didn't care about the details, but it wasn't just her son he hated. It was her pride. Tilrock wanted nothing more than to break her spirit, to wipe out that proud look she always gave him. But right then, something weird happened. A mysterious green light burst into the room. A new warrior appeared out of nowhere and hit Tilrock hard, catching him totally off guard and killed him in a single slash. In the chaos, Leonia saw the light from outside and was shocked. It was Fenslot, a knight from her kingdom. Dude, let's go! Let's celebrate the death of this fucker Tilrock! I am so happy right now! Back outside, the battle between Leon and Herman was pure madness. Blue lightning-like energy flashed everywhere as they slammed and dodged, neither giving up. Herman taunted Leon, asking how long he would keep running away. Leon, fired up, used his whole body like a battering ram and smashed into Herman. It was a surprise move. Herman blocked it with his sword, but the hit was so strong it pushed him backward, leaving huge marks in the ground. Herman realized this fight wasn't ending unless one of them totally won. Then he noticed something weird. There was a strange, wild power leaking out of Leon, some energy Herman had never seen before. He laughed at the idea that a half-breed nobody like Leon could ever be king of the forest so quickly. He kept being sarcastic, thinking there was no way Leon could pull this off. Suddenly, a massive ogre beast stood in front of him. It looks like Leon called that monster. Herman saw the attack at the last second and dodged, slicing its hand off. Not stopping there, Herman jumped in, using one of his fancy combat tricks. Blow after blow, he wore the beast down until he finally finished it with a devastating attack. Blood splattered everywhere as the monster fell in pieces. Herman was left panting, his armor covered in beast blood. Well, the truth is, this was all just a trap. But damn, Leon, staring in shock, asked how Herman could possibly have killed that big monster so easily. The knight's power is indeed not ordinary. Herman just smiled and shot back the question, asking what Leon ever thought a knight was. Leon told him that this was pretty much what he expected. A real knight was nothing like a regular soldier. Herman had dodged his trap and was more dangerous than ever. That made Herman mad. He started shouting, calling Leon a worthless hybrid and threatening that he'd make Leon pay for talking back. They keep fighting and sending blow after blow. Leon just mocked him, saying a real knight should do better. He couldn't even go for the weak points. He called Herman just a puppet from Trevenia. Herman got furious, yelling that Leon was forgetting his place. Then, Herman charged his sword with wild energy that made the blade roar like thunder. He hurled it straight at Leon, so fast Leon couldn't dodge. Leon threw himself forward, taking the hit with his shoulder to protect himself as best he could. Herman told him coldly that now he'd truly show him what it meant to fight a knight. So, Herman thought he had Leon cornered, but Leon dodged at the last second. Out of nowhere, one of the wolves jumped and bit Herman's hand. Leon didn't waste a second. He hit Herman with a power punch that sent him flying. In the end, Leon really won the fight with that bastard knight. When the fight was over, the village chief stood in the ruins, holding Ken, the village commander, and just staring at all the destruction, feeling deep sadness. When the sunrise came, he could see that Leon had won this nasty fight. Now, Leon stood over the defeated Herman, holding him by the neck. Even as he lost, Herman was full of hate. He screamed at Leon, calling him an ogre bastard and a slave of the Uruks. Herman was disgusted, saying people like Leon ruined everything, and how the fuck he dared to drive the continent's knights like this. Don't think that winning this time would mean he would be safe. The other knights will point a sword at his neck more. But Leon was calm. He told Herman that threats were useless now, and said he had already beaten the meaning of knight, and he could do it again and again. Leon replied that he never wanted things to get this way. Herman, going all out angry, shouted about how hard his life had been to reach this level, then, with a last rush of rage, punched Leon. That punch took Herman out for good. Leon finally crushed his head and killed that knight to dust. Thank God. After the fight, Leon was all alone in the mess left behind. Leonia came out of the house, worried, searching for him. When Leon reappeared, he told her he had come back because the enemies had planned to use the villagers as bait. He just couldn't run away. Leonia was upset, saying he could have died, and asked if he was really willing to risk his life for a village that had already turned its back on him before. Yet, Leon insisted the villagers had given them shelter and were only weak and afraid, not bad people. Leonia warned him that even if he saved them, the villagers would try to push him out again because of what happened, which left Leon stunned. He realized she might be right. Maybe he really did need to protect himself, not just others, in this world. He asked how she was and also what happened to Tilrock. Leonia said Tilrock just left quietly when things didn't go his way. She noticed how beat up Leon looked and told him to rest. Cleaning up could wait. Leon agreed, saying he would make a resting spot for her too, but he paused and told her the honest truth. He fought this battle because he wanted to keep living by her side. He begged her to never ask him to run away again. Leonia could only close her eyes. She and her son are sure living a hard life. Later that night, Leonia sat by Leon as he slept, watching over him with worry and love. She looked at the glowing green pendant around his neck, the one that always protected him. Meanwhile, the villagers made a big bonfire and gathered in silence. In the village hall, the chief sat alone, lost in serious worry. He remembered a talk with Ken, who said he didn't blame Leon for Daryl's death, but also asked, "Can you be sure something like this won't happen again, Chief?" Ken reminded him how deadly memories could be in this world. He had once turned his back on Leon. What would happen if Leon got angry and decided to wipe out the entire village? While the chief was stressed, suddenly a powerful green light appeared in front of him. From the light, a man in armor appeared, Fenslot. The chief recognized what he saw, amazed to see Fenslot again, and asked the armored man if he'd been watching this whole time. Fenslot confirmed it. He said he told the chief this day would come. He explained that they'd survived many dangers over the last 14 years, but this time was different. Now that Leon was connected to a knight, Princess Leonia's life was in even more danger. The chief guessed that maybe the real problem was witnesses, like the thick-bearded mercenary, Tilrock. Yet Fenslot told him not to worry. He had already made sure Tilrock would stay quiet. Yeah, he killed him so that loud knight won't ever talk again. The chief suddenly realized Fenslot must have been in contact with Leonia too. The knight just paused, silent. In the end, the chief asked a big question. What is Leonia's decision? The scene shifted to Leonia, sitting next to her sleeping son, quietly crying as she wrote a letter beside Leon's glowing pendant. Suddenly, the scene shifted. There was this super messed up place, kind of like the worst ever desert battlefield. Dude, there were swords and arrows everywhere. This place is called Arnia Frontline. There, the village chief seems to want to meet someone. Inside some scrappy camp full of tents, a group of mercenaries was rolling in. They were led by Kincaid, who was this really tough old guy. Kincaid seemed like he had too much on his mind. He started to ask what the chief wanted to do here. Kincaid seems to have known the chief long before this, and told him that maybe the two of them were not that different after all, because they both had to play games for knights. But then Kincaid got back to business. He really wanted to meet this talking ogre everyone kept mentioning. Meanwhile, In a forest full of broken-down buildings, there was a tree. Who was hanging out there? That was Leon. He was sitting on a branch and looking all sad. He thought to himself that it had already been half a year since he and his mom had stopped talking to their old village. Down below, there was a very beat-up little house with a lousy fence. This was Leon's new home, just him and his mom. Leon was worried. He wondered if life could really go on like this, because things were rough. Inside the little house, Leon checked on his mom. She looked really sick, and the place was damaged from some disaster before. He started to panic a little. He thought that winter was coming, and they had nothing ready. He told himself that he needed to go grab firewood quick. Things were not looking good for these two. Then, in the woods, things got crazy. This giant troll, and I mean seriously huge dude, was stomping around, and it looked angry. Out of nowhere, one of Kincaid's mercenaries popped out. He had a sharp helmet, and his armor looked dark and serious. This mercenary was super fast. He dodged every attack, then slashed the troll over and over. The troll made a crazy noise and dropped to the ground. Boom. Game over for the troll. Kincaid walked over and looked at the creature with some serious attitude. He said that people used to call this thing the king of the forest, but now he thought that wasn't such a big deal. The chief behind him started calling out, yet Kincaid started grilling the chief. He asked if the chief was sure he actually saw Leon himself somewhere around here. He wasn't impressed. He thought Leon was supposed to be dangerous, like controlling beasts and taking out knights, but now he wasn't sure. In his head, he also wondered if this ogre, Leon, was actually holding back by only sending this weak troll. The chief guessed that maybe Leon was holding back because of him, and he said that if it was really Leon, he would not do any harm. But it had been so long, so he wasn't totally sure either. Just then, out of nowhere, a voice rang through the air. Leon talked to them, that he was not good at controlling the troll yet and never wanted to hurt anyone. So he asked everyone to just leave him and her mom in peace. But Kincaid wasn't done. He heard that Leon could talk, and he snapped that he wasn't here to make deals. He wanted Leon to pay for his crimes. If Leon didn't help, Kincaid said that he would have to go after Leon's mom. Dude, we know Leon would kick that knight's ass. Hearing that, Leon got so mad. He jumped from where he was hiding and rushed at Kincaid, sending him flying away. Yeah, things got heated. The village chief freaked out and started yelling for Leon to stop, because Kincaid was a dangerous guy. Then, Leon started to explain to everyone. He said that many people, like Daryl, had already died, and Ken almost died too. He agreed to cut off all contact between himself and humans because people thought Leon was the reason for all the trouble. He didn't fight back. He just accepted it. But his mom still chose to stay with him, even if it was really risky for her. That meant, for Leon, nothing was more important than his mother now. He was super aware of this, and he knew that the chief still cared about him, even after all the drama. But suddenly Kincaid shot his sword toward Leon. Well, he said his attack wasn't deadly, but he said that if it had hit perfectly, Leon would have been half paralyzed at least. He won't do any harm though, because he said that Leon was really valuable. He then looked at Leon and told him that, since he could talk, he wanted to ask about someone named Tilrock. Apparently, Tilrock was once one of Kincaid's people. He had taken a job with a Soiran knight to go hunting, but a different knight killed Tilrock instead. When they found Tilrock's body, Kincaid said that Leon's mom, Leonia, was nearby. He then asked Leon if his mom ever told him what really happened that day. Leon was shocked. He had a flashback of his mom sitting alone in the house, looking so sad and worried. Looking at that reaction, Kincaid guessed that maybe Leonia hid something from Leon, and he asked Leon if he had any idea why she did that. Meanwhile, Leonia was chilling with a book and a candle. Suddenly, he remembered how Fenslot showed up with a flash of bright green light and his glowing sword. He was there just in time to save her from danger. She looked at the window and frowned. Damn, guys, she's always so mysterious. Then, Leon and Kincaid come to Leon's house. Everyone seemed kinda tense. Suddenly, Leonia came out of the house, and Leon yelled because this night was too chilly for her mother. Yet Kincaid said just as the knight said, the strangest thing was here. People used to think Leonia was dead, but now she was totally alive, just in a rough situation. He also started talking about Leon. He thought Leon was super powerful, maybe even more than a normal half-ogre. Leonia told Kincaid that she already knew about those rumors, and she knew they would see each other like this one day. Leon was confused and kind of shocked. He didn't understand what they were talking about. He asked his mom why she never told him anything about being a princess or about the death of that mercenary Tilrock. He shouted his feelings. He said that his mom kept everything secret and now they were alone, with lots of problems from the knights. Leonia tried to calm Leon down, but he was too upset. Leon remembered what happened to Tilrock. He thought the death was connected to his mom, because of some knight linked to her past. Leon said that when he came back to the ruined house that day, He felt something scary, like he was being watched. He was tired of not knowing the truth. He just wanted to stop living in the dark. Leonia changed the topic and asked Leon what job he had to do. Leon explained that, to pay for the dead mercenary, he had to take his place and work with Kincaid's mercenaries. Losing a mercenary meant someone had to step in, and it was up to Leon to pay the debt. Leonia got really angry. She said that the mercenary was a coward because he tried to threaten a mother who couldn't even walk. She told Leon that this didn't sound fair at all. She asked if Leon ever wanted to fight back, instead of just accepting it. Sensing this could become another fight, the village chief tried to talk to Leonia next. He was worried about her and said that Leon didn't need to keep paying debts like this. He said Kincaid might be scary, but on the battlefield, Leon might be safer than being a regular soldier. The chief still wanted Leonia and Leon to come back to the village for safety, but Leonia told him to stop worrying. She knew he only wanted to protect the village. She said her safety didn't matter as much as Leon's wishes. She thought it was all up to her son now. She called Leon over. Leon was still lost. He asked his mom what she was going to do now. Then, after a minute, Leon made up his mind. He said he would go, he would pay the debt, and join Kincaid's mercenaries. He was ready. Hearing that, Leonia could only make a sad face. Fast forward 5 days. Leon rocked up to a crazy-looking desert with Kincaid. He wore a big hooded cloak so people wouldn't recognize that he was Half-Ogre. Kincaid told him they were at the spot. Yet all he saw was ruins and empty land. But that was the magic. There was a teleportation spell hidden here that would send Leon straight to the Arnia front line, right into Kincaid's camp. Kincaid said that Leon should just show Kincaid's mark and someone would help him. He even teased that Leon might meet someone familiar. Kincaid was hanging out too. He gave Leon a rare small smile and said that Leon cared too much about others, even after all this headache. He told him that he was starting to like Leon. But then, as always, he got serious again. He wanted his payment for getting Leon here safe. It was just the mercenary lifestyle, bro. Kincaid asked Leon a heavy question. Why didn't Leon use his big strength to just break everyone and escape? Why didn't he just run off with his mother? Leon could have killed him with his strength alone. Well, Leon said he didn't really know. He only wanted to listen to his mom. She never wanted Leon to become a monster. And even if he looked scary on the outside, he wanted to fight his fate and be proud so he could stand by his mom's side. Kincaid thought that was interesting. He said the spell was ready, pointing to a flagpole that glowed blue. The magic lit up, and Leon got sucked away in a flash of light. Next minute, Leon popped into the middle of a rough camp, right at the Arnia front line. There were tough-looking mercenaries everywhere, and they totally panicked when they saw Leon. Some guys started shouting that there was an ogre near the captain's quarters. One of the mercenaries even yelled for someone named Baxter, telling him people were looking for him. Baxter turned around, saw Leon in his hood, and his eyes went wide. Bro, I miss Baxter.